Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
The last of the major pro sports leagues kicks off this week, and BetOnline is your top spot for all your NBA action this season. With MLB postseason, NFL, college football, and NHL in full swing, BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. Get everything NBA at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access support for every sport, anytime. Head to BetOnline today to get into the action. And don't forget to use your promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline.
This is Coach Kurt Signetti from JMU, and you are listening to the Fun Belt Podcast.
If you didn't know before, now you know why they call this the Fun Belt.
Very excited about the Sun Belt.
You know, while other conferences have been breaking up, our conference has become stronger.
The state of Sun Belt football is the strongest in our history.
I saw Fun Belt Conference, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I got to join the show. It sounds a lot of fun.
Welcome to another edition of Fun Belt Podcast, where we're going to talk about your favorite subject, the Sun Belt. We're part of Believe Network, where we believe in the Sun Belt. And I believe we're short a guy, Thibodeaux. Am I right? Am I looking at this correctly? Are we down a man?
We're down a man, but we went to the bullpen.
Yeah.
And we got one of our good show contributors there, of Creg Stephenson of AL.com, a guy from my heart, the heart of Dixie. He's a Bama guy. I don't hold that against him because, you know, I'm an Auburn guy. But we love having Creg on to talk about Troy and our love 'em and hate 'em South Alabama Jaguars.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Craig. And with me, as always, is Dusty Thibodeaux from the Warhawk Report. He's here. He's feeling 1,000%. So we're going to get 1,000% effort from him tonight. Craig, speaking of 1,000% effort, we're going to talk a little bit about football, but damn, what happened to the Jaguars basketball team last night? A bye game with Mobile. It was miserable. You were miserable. What happened?
Well, let's not put too much weight onto the phrase bye game because, I mean, they're just coming from across town.
That's
I think
so
they're lunch or something. I don't think they're paying them a bunch of money to drive from, 8 Mile, which is just outside the city limits of Mobile, to, Mobile proper. But anyway, yeah, it was bad. They lost to the University of Mobile, which they were 9-0 all time against. I think they beat them by about 35 when they played them last year. In AIA school, so you're playing down 3 divisions and you lose. I mean, they were down big. I mean, they were down 14-4. They were down by 27 a couple of times, and it just seemed like South Alabama. They swore they took them seriously, but it didn't seem like it, and they just weren't. Couldn't make a shot, couldn't stop anybody. Mobile had guys getting to the rim on them, which, they had 43 points in the paint, I think it was. I mean, that's just bizarre to see an NAIA team just physically dominating you. And, they played better in the second half. They got it to 7 at one point, but they were just too far gone at that point. And, I guess you just got to wash your hands of it and move on. But, man, that's a heck of a way to start the season, that's for sure, because, they play Alabama in a week. They played Maryland in about 2 weeks, and some other, decent teams before they get to the Sun Belt. So, boy, they need to improve fast.
In this case, this game, do you feel that it was more of a case that this was kind of the national championship for the Mobile Rams and that they were playing up to kind of dominate the in-city school? Or do you feel that, kind of like you said, South Alabama just kind of looked past them? If they go through the motions, it's enough to get the win.
Yeah, I think both. I mean, one, there is definitely some playing up for Mobile because, Darnell Archie, the head coach at Mobile's former South Alabama assistant under Matthew Graves, he's the legendary free throw shooting champion from Butler back when he was in school. But yeah, I think South Alabama, you got a bunch of transfers on this team. I think they only had 2-3 guys that played any at all last year that were back, and you got some guys coming in saying, hey, look, we're playing an AIA school, and we should be able to dominate these guys. And it just didn't happen, man. It was bad. There was no way. It was not fluky. They got completely outplayed for most of 40 minutes. The only thing that kept it even as close as it was that Mobile missed a bunch of free throws. But it was awful. It really was.
Well, it wasn't just South Alabama that was putting out even performances. The Sun Belt itself, aside from the magic win from James Madison taking down number 4 Michigan State last night,
right?
ULM blown out by Houston. Arkansas State took it pretty hard against Wisconsin. Texas State loses sort of a ghostly revenge game against UALR. It was a lot of games. I think Coastal Carolina just came away with a last-second bucket to beat something called Piedmont. It just didn't seem like a dominating performance by the Sun Belt by any stretch of the means. But like you said, it's one game, Craig, and you just have to move on to the next. I mean, nobody's really in midseason shape yet, and basketball is just one of those sports that just takes a couple weeks to gel.
No, I don't disagree. And, it was kind of a bad week for South Alabama overall because lost to Troy last Thursday, we'll talk about, but also the women's soccer team had one loss and got out of the national tournament. They were the regular season champion, obviously, and but lost early, I think in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament and did not make the postseason. So, yeah, it's not been a great week to be a Jag.
Well, without further ado, then, maybe we should get straight into recapping Week 10, because there were some really great things that happened in Week 10. Tibbs, are you well enough to get us through this? Are you you're the guy who usually drives this train. Are you able? Do you have the wherewithal? Did you take your vitamin C? Can you get Craig and I through this?
From the famous scene of the program, Coach, I'm hurt. I'm not injured.
Deep.
Start taking steroids like Steve Latimer and put your head through.
Whatever it takes to get up for the show.
There you go.
So we kick off, obviously, with that Thursday night game. Troy, they've been dominant in the series.
Yeah.
Is this just a case that Troy really is the best team in the West and the best team in the state of Alabama when it comes to Sun Belt football? Or is South Alabama just snake bitten in this rivalry game?
I mean, I think both. Obviously, Carter Bradley was hurt and did not play. They had to start a true freshman on the road against one of the best defenses and probably the best overall defense in the Sun Belt. I can say that because Shane's not here to advocate him. Statistically, they're the best defense in the Sun Belt for sure. They had to start a freshman, Gio Lopez, in that game, and it's 2 times in 3. Well, really, if you count all 3 years, the last 3 years since Womack has been there. The first year they lost Jake Bentley to a knee injury on the first series of the game. They were, driving for a touchdown and he got hurt. And then last year, LaDamian Webb was not 100%, even though he played in the game. And then this year, Carter Bradley's out. So that definitely hurt their chances to win now. Even if Bradley was healthy, I think Troy still probably would have won that game. But South Alabama just didn't have much offensively. They had to, their offense is predicated on taking shots down the field. In the passing game, they just weren't able to do that as much with Gio Lopez, even though he's a really good athlete. And I know you guys probably watched. He had some really dynamic plays that he kept alive. That's the kind of thing they have not had at South Alabama in a long time, if ever.
You mentioned that actually while you were tweeting, you were talking about, and I guess you're right. Carter Bradley and the guy before,
Jake Bentley.
Yeah, both big arm guys, right? Good pocket guys. Don't have a scrambler. I thought Gio looked really good in that regard, but still just a freshman.
Yeah. I think that, if he'd have had more time to prepare or, maybe started the week before or something like that, we might have seen more. But, his future is really bright. There's no question about that. But I think you would have won it if you could have had Carter Bradley, we would have wanted him. That said, Troy's a good team, man. I mean, they're better than I thought they were going to be. They did a really good job in the transfer portal. Chris Lewis, man, that receiver from Kentucky. how was he not good enough to play Kentucky? I mean, Kentucky hadn't been able to throw the ball in 40 years since Tim Couch left, and Jared Lorenzen at least, and that guy he's a man. I'm telling you, man. They've really plugged and played on the defensive side of the ball. They had a lot of good defensive linemen and DBs back. They had to rebuild the linebacker core, but it seems like they're well on their way there. And John Summerall's a really good coach. I mean, he's 18-4, 9-0 against the Sun Belt West, which is big. They are well on their way to hosting the Sun Belt Championship for the second straight year, assuming we don't see some magical reversal with the JMU situation.
Yeah, Lewis was just pushing guys around. I mean, it was like a man versus sixth graders out there. He could do whatever he wanted against South Alabama. And what surprised me about South Alabama, Craig, and this Tibbs and I were both talking about this. Tibbs, you thought South Alabama was going to be number one in the West, right? I know I did.
I did.
You? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we both picked South Alabama, and I picked them predicated on so many defensive starters were coming back to South Alabama. And then I thought Troy would be knocked down a bit. One, I never really believed in Gunnar Watson. I feel like I'm having to do a mea culpa on that. But two, I thought Troy had lost too much on defense. Right. And they just seem to have gotten better. It's just weird to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Again, they do have some quality pieces back on the defensive side of the ball. Richard Tribuna, TJ Jackson, who was suspended early in the year and is back now. Dale Pettis, Reddy Stewart. Those are good players. I mean, those are all Sun Belt quality players. But yeah, offensively, I wasn't sure what they were going to be. Gunnar Watson, like you said, had been just kind of a guy. Yeah. Although he had some moments last year, especially in the conference championship game. Offensive line, they had to kind of retool, replace a couple of 3-year starters up there, including one that was drafted by an NFL team. And then, had to redo the receiver room too. So, yeah, I'm really impressed. They're obviously well coached. I mean, John Summerall is not only a good coach, but he's also picked a pretty good staff. He had to replace his defensive coordinator, and they have not missed a beat. They've even gotten better. With South Alabama, though, they have had a couple of key injuries. There's no two ways about it. Devin Voisin, who was probably their best receiver, even though Colin Lacey's having a great year, tore his ACL in week 2. Braylon McReynolds, who was the kickoff returner and probably the speed back with LaDamian Webb, broke his collarbone in week 1. Keith Gallman got hurt against Tulane again. He's out for the year. Very experienced defensive back. They've had a couple other guys miss here and there, but they've underachieved. There's no question about it. If you can go on the road and beat Oklahoma State, which has a chance to win the Big 12 now, you can beat them by 4 touchdowns. There's no reason you should be losing at home to Central Michigan and Louisiana. So they're remarkably inconsistent, and it's really difficult to say why, but they just are. And, now they're going to struggle to be bowl eligible, with Arkansas State, which looks like a dangerous team coming in, and they still got to play Texas State in the last game, as well as Marshall, which is struggling coming in. So I think they're going to get to 6 wins, but it's going to be tight.
So speaking of the Arkansas State Red Wolves, another big Sun Belt West showdown there.
Yeah.
The Cajuns went to Arkansas looking to just really solidify their season. And man, the giving of one Jeremy Harper to the athletic foundation there at Arkansas State has done wonders. That the water feature is no longer flowing with water. It's streaming gold. Now, I think it's because he had too many PBRs and he was adding to the fountains.
I did. You know what? My brother Rex Steele is there, and we sat down and watched the game in the stands, like the part of the people. I wasn't in the press box. And it was probably the most complete game I've seen Butch Jones' team in Jonesboro play, just top to finish. There was one busted play where Zion Chris, before he got injured, threw a one-play touchdown. It was something like a 90-yard touchdown. And after that, it was just pretty much a defensive beatdown from Arkansas State. Offensively, they just looked great. They ran the ball well, which is something that Arkansas State hasn't done in a long time. This is second game in the row where they've run the ball well. And most importantly, the defense put a shutdown on that Louisiana run game, which was ranked first in the Sun Belt. What's crazy about Louisiana is that they've got this great run game, but they don't have those marquee names like Rashid Ali or LaDamian Webb or Vidal or all those other guys, a million guys. The Sun Belt is super blessed. Yeah, I'm sorry. Kamani Vidal. The Sun Belt's super blessed. They don't have a big name, but man, they can run the ball. And I believe Arkansas State held them to like 60 yards. So there's something with Arkansas State right now that they've kind of found that switch. Everything seems to be clicking into place. The freshman quarterback, Jalen Rayner, seems to know what he's doing now. He knows the playbook. He's comfortable with the wide receivers. The offensive line just keeps getting stronger. And admittedly, we're looking, feeling pretty good. The team's feeling pretty good entering into that South Alabama game.
Well, we know they've recruited well, right? I mean, they had the best recruiting class in the Sun Belt, a couple under Butch. And is it now that that's just starting to bear fruit, so to speak?
Yes. And if you listen to Butch Jones for just a short amount of time, he'll remind you that's a lot of young guys playing. He likes to say that they've started the most freshmen than any other team in the group of five. I haven't done the research to confirm that. I'm just assuming he's telling the truth. But yeah, it's a bunch of young guys, especially last year. It was all freshmen and really not a lot of senior leadership. Now we're beginning to see these guys suddenly understand what it takes to play football at this level. And it's pretty exciting. Now Red Wolves are one game from bowl eligibility. Didn't think we'd be having that conversation after scoring a total of 3 points the first two games. So it's pretty wild times in Arkansas State.
So, Craig, a question I have for you on that.
Yeah.
Jalen Rayner at Arkansas State, one of four freshman quarterbacks that have seen action now in the Sun Belt West, with Jalen Rayner, Blake Murphy at ULM, Gino there at South Alabama, Zion Christ at Louisiana Lafayette. Does that give you a lot of hope that the West is going to continue to be kind of that dominant offensive juggernaut going forward? Or do you feel that we're just about to see kind of everybody picked off and moving up to more G5, bigger G5 or even the P5?
That's kind of what I was wondering. I was because you look around, I can speak to Gio Lopez, who was a pretty well-regarded player in the state. He was an all-state quarterback on the 7A level, which is pretty solid. Obviously, the highest classification in the state. And I was really kind of surprised Auburn didn't swoop in on him, because it seems like he would be perfect for their offense. He runs that read option stuff that Hugh Freeze likes to run, and but they didn't, and that's good. And it's, at least for now, it's good. But yeah, you would expect, I don't know which ones, but probably two of the four probably won't finish their careers where they are now. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way of the world.
Yeah, that was my parting shot last show. Was I got all excited because Arkansas State had a player named a big award list, a defensive player, a guy named Javonte Mackey, and he's a freshman. It's a freshman award. And I thought, I almost want him not to be recognized. I'd rather have no recognition for this guy, because this is just a guy that suddenly is on everybody's radar. It becomes an NIL loss. So it's too bad we have to feel this way.
I will say this: South Alabama has not really lost anybody to the portal that they've wanted to keep in the last couple of years, which is which is obviously good. They've got a little bit of NIL thing going. They've been able to help some guys with that. Troy, I guess, lost Marcus Jones a couple of years ago, went to Houston, and then is now in the NFL with the New England Patriots. And then they lost Tez Johnson to, Oregon?
No, wait, Tez Johnson, he went to North Carolina.
Bo Nix. He's Bo Nix's.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, so obviously there have been some big stars that they have lost, but they've still, there's still enough quality on those rosters, and there are so many guys in the portal that it seems like you can restock even if you are losing some of your marquee guys.
A school that seems like they have buku quarterbacks, and this is another case of a freshman quarterback on the East. Ethan Vasco of Coastal Carolina steps in for the injured McCall and the injured Guest, still able to get the 28-24 win at Old Dominion, throwing for 180 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Is Coastal Carolina just quarterback you, where they can just pick another guy out of the stands?
Well, Tim Beck knows what he's doing with quarterbacks. But what was more impressive about the quarterback's performance, I think he had 170 yards rushing and a touchdown. I mean, my God, I mean, those are running back numbers. So, yeah, it doesn't seem to matter who Coastal Carolina throws out, no matter who gets injured, whether it's Grayson McCall, whether it's Guest, and now Vasco. Whoever Tim Beck has on hand, he's going to make into a serviceable quarterback.
That's why he got that job, was, his quarterback work at NC State. And yeah, I credit to Coastal Carolina, because I had kind of written them off about 3 weeks, a month ago, and they have really kind of turned the corner a little bit. And with the JMU situation being what it is, I don't know that anybody, really wants to step up and win the East. Doesn't seem like it. I thought Georgia State was kind of out of the mix, and now they're right back in it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, Coastal Carolina, they lose their first 2 conference games. It looks like they're kind of done. They're fried. They're cooked. I think I had buried them in my columns, and now I think they've won 4 straight in conference, and sort of in the catbird seat right now in terms of who might win the East. With
State's not dead, which again I thought they were dead a month ago.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. They win 2 straight.
Sean Elliott. There, Jeremy Craig is a guy that I live in fear of.
Yeah,
that he is at any time just going to headbutt me, choke me out in the good old wrestling MMA move or whatever else. And I was supposed to be at Center Park Stadium on Saturday. I'm glad I did not get to go, because he was pissed post game that his team absolutely did nothing. And it shows in the time of possession, where the Panthers had 17 and a half minutes of time of possession, just long enough for Darren Granger to run for 103 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the rest was all Signetti show, along with McLeod getting 307, 4 touchdowns. There's nobody that can beat James Madison except for James Madison.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
No, you're right. I saw them in person when they played South Alabama. I saw them against Troy. I've seen them other times. They're legit, man. They're good. You can pass on them a little bit, which South was able to do, which Troy was able to do. I think they both went over 300 yards on them, but you just can't run them at all. And they did lose Jalen Green, which is going to hurt a little bit. They're good enough offensively. I really like the quarterback, McLeod. He's not spectacular, but he doesn't make big mistakes. And they're not going to. I said after they played South Alabama, I didn't think they were going to lose the rest of the year, just based on what I had seen.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned you can throw on JMU. We had mentioned that on this show, Tibbs. Yeah, you could throw on JMU. That's their weakness. It's almost like Signetti heard it and just got pissed off and said, fine, you're not going to get any passes either, because what he does is he just gets that front line to rush the quarterback, and the quarterback doesn't have time to make plays. And so who cares if the secondary is kind of young and inexperienced? They don't have to make plays. That front line is just so damn good.
You can pass on them if you can get the throw off. But it's really difficult to do that, man. They're just a bunch of maniacs on the that front 4 or 5, depending on how they line it up. So
meanwhile, Georgia State had a lot of sand in them going into that game, Tibbs, and they were feeling pretty good. They'd already suffered that first loss against Georgia Southern, so some of that sand had been punctured out of the bag. Then they get humbled again by JMU. Where are they now, you think?
We're talking about Georgia State. Is that who you said?
Yeah, Georgia State.
Well, obviously they're at least a half a game off the pace. It's such a jumble over there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to say. Georgia State only has 2 games left, because they got App at Old Dominion and LSU, which obviously doesn't matter. But I don't. And I have a hard time predicting any of those games, to be honest with you.
I think it's funny, though, that we're praising McLeod when Signetti was like, yeah, he's got a lot of bad habits. We got to coach out of him. We don't think that he's quite our caliber of quarterback. I would love to not have his caliber of quarterback.
I'm telling you, well, Signetti's a poor mouther, man, big time. And, there are some – it seems like the most successful coaches are. Summerall's the same way. I laugh every time I bring up, hey, you guys only gave up 3 points in the second half this week. I think they've outscored the West 80-9 in the second half this year, something like that. And, and he's like, well, we didn't play very well.
Yeah.
We gave away yards. I was like, well, dude, come on. I mean,
Greg, you're not making me feel very good knowing that Troy's coming to the Bayou this week.
It's going to be rough. It's going to be a train wreck.
Really, man, they do not make mistakes.
I'm glad it's Military Appreciation Weekend, and that way maybe the military can step between us and stop the bloodshed.
Get the well placed cannon shot. I don't know.
Maybe a tank to run up the middle. I don't know.
Adding to my woes,
yes,
I have the stats pulled up
of
ULM's trip to Southern Miss.
Very brave.
24-7, Southern Miss wins, but I mean, ULM literally turned the game over. 4 turnovers that equated for 17 points that Southern Miss scored. Blake Murphy, as great as he's been, he had tip balls. Tip balls are caught by somebody. And unfortunately, it was caught by a defensive player where at least one was a pick six. And it was just a helpless game. 73 yards rushing. Time of possession was 20 minutes. Southern Miss had double that. It was I don't know why I kept watching it.
That one surprised me a bit. I didn't get to see much of it, but I did, follow the stats and all that. And, Southern Miss, credit to them, though, it does seem like Will Hall turning over the play calling has actually made a difference, and not quite often when a coach does that or fires his coordinator or whatever, you don't see any effect at all, but it definitely seems to have worked, or at least, helped Southern Miss some. I was, Southern Miss, when they played South Alabama, which was like 3.5 weeks ago, whatever it was, Tuesday night game. Gore, at that point, had thrown 1 pass all year. And I'm like, well, why are you taking that out of your offense? It's really all you got. I mean, because he was a weapon that way. Yeah. And they decided they were going to play it straight, and they weren't talented enough to do that. But, he's a really good player. I don't think South Alabama's pretty much stopped him every time they played him, but I just seemed like they weren't playing to their strengths, and maybe they're doing that a little bit more now.
Speaking of Gore, a couple of weeks ago we ran a little tiny segment about players that charmed us and players that disappointed us. And one of the players that disappointed us was Frank Gore Jr. He just wasn't the top tier running back. Since then, the man's been on fire. The last 2 games, I think he's run for 370 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. So it's almost like he heard us and said, F you, I'm going to be good at it.
Not to be one of those guys, but if he wasn't Frank Gore Jr., would we make as big a deal out of him? Because, just based on what I've seen, there's 3 or 4 running backs in the Sun Belt better than him, I think.
All right, here's why I think that a lot of what he is legit. He's the kind of running back when he's on his game, and he's always been on his game against Arkansas State. He always has a great game. It's like you can't tackle him. You hit him, and bam, he has another 10 yards. When he is running well, he is just a very good yak guy. Now, and then it seems like the only way we can ever get around him is when he gets hurt, and then he gets hurt, and then we win the game. And that's how we beat Southern Miss. He ran out of juice. But yeah, I don't know. You could be right. I mean, he is a legacy guy, right? He's a Nepto guy. But I want to talk a little bit about ULM, Tibbs. It seemed like, like early in the season, the Warhawks were the most dangerous bad team in the Sun Belt. You know, they were losing games by 1. They were losing games by a field goal. It was like, oh my God, we barely escaped the Warhawks. The Warhawks are better than we think. And now they're just getting blown out on a regular basis. What has happened, Tibbs?
Locker room issues, and you hit that 7 loss. There's nothing really else to play for. With that said, it still wouldn't surprise me that this weekend ULM comes in and beats Troy. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me if Troy comes in and hangs 100 on them. It wouldn't surprise me.
There's a lot of people who would like that.
Well, you're right in the fact that the ULM, it seems like ULM always gets somebody, Yeah. But I think maybe when they had those 2 1-point losses, Texas State and App State, they missed their chance at that, Yeah. Texas State especially. They had them on the ropes.
That was a hard game to watch, man. I mean, it was fun to watch, but at the end, it was like, oh man, Warhawks, no, not this way.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, I think the biggest thing is there's not a consistent quarterback play. We knew that Jai Wright was going to be serviceable, but he wasn't really your guy. And Blake Murphy wasn't ready. I mean, the kid was getting ready for prom this time last year. He was not ready to take the reins of a D1 program. Now, I think next year, he's taken his lumps this year, that he'll be in a lot better shape. But for right now, it's I almost wish we had Frank Gore, the passer, in the backfield there for ULM so that we would kind of know consistently what we were going to get out of the passing game.
Yeah.
Wow. Wildcat, baby. It would surprise. It would be a biggest upset of the year if they beat Troy. Now, Louisiana in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, 2.5 weeks. If they don't have Zion Chris, that wouldn't shock me for them to go down to Lafayette and win that game.
Yeah, I personally think Louisiana's in a little bit of trouble, but that's for here or there. Yeah.
Pressing on through the week after I now have to take another drink.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
The Bobcats jumping in the river that runs through San Marcos after they finally hit 6 wins. I love that tradition. Craig, when you give your comments there, what's the tradition there that South Alabama kind of has for the big wins that they have? As the entire Texas State team, the president, the AD, hell, the beat writer, Chef Cardello was jumping in.
Yeah, I don't know that South Alabama has one on like a pregame tradition or a postgame tradition. They do have they had a thing for a while. I don't think they're doing it this year where they would, if they had a turnover, they would throw Mardi Gras beads into the crowd.
Nice.
More. They have obviously the number 5 jersey they give to a different player every week in honor of Anthony Mostella, who was on the original South Alabama team and was killed in a motorcycle accident in 2010. So they give the number 5 jersey to a different guy every week. It's going to be Quentin Wilfon this week. But, in terms of post-game stuff, they don't really have that I know of, that I think of off the top of my head. But, yeah, that was cool. Good for Texas State, man. I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't be competitive based on where they are geographically, even though it's a very competitive part of the state. Obviously, University of Texas follows everything up there, but even UTSA's come along and some of the other programs, they're not too far from, Texas Tech and Baylor and places like that. But, I've been impressed with what they did. I figured they're going to be dangerous. TJ Finley, never was great at Auburn or LSU, but if he was good enough to start in the SEC, you figured he was going to have a chance to be an impact player in the Sun Belt, and that's been the case.
Finley, he sort of looked mortal. He looked mortal against Troy, which everybody looks mortal against Troy. Bounced back with 301 yards and 3 touchdowns. I kind of thought maybe Texas State, it wasn't their year, guys. I thought, they're having a good year this year, and they should be happy to have that. But maybe next year is the real year that you should be looking out for Texas State. But Texas State is still technically in the hunt, and nobody would want to see ULM defeat Troy this week more than the Bobcats, Tibbs.
Well, I don't know. The Red Wolves might.
We might, yeah, but we're just
mathematically alive too.
Yeah,
we're accepting donations just to try to help the cause. We'll pass the hat.
I might start a complete NIL just for the Warhawks win against Troy. I will wear a Warhawks hat all week if you guys beat Troy.
I don't think we sell them that big. But here's the thing about Texas State that I think is lost. Okay, they hit 6 wins. Fantastic. Great year. GJ Kinney, probably coach of the year in the Sun Belt.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. They are still not guaranteed a bowl game. And a 7-5 Texas State team didn't go to a bowl game.
Don't do this. Don't put that voodoo on.
I talked with
State Bobcats.
I talked with former show guest Haley Blocker, who's now at U of H, when I was there for that travesty of a basketball game. And I told her, I said, it was great when they hit 5, but remember, they hit that skid. And I was like, that's it. They're done. And she said, yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing as well. But they're finally at 6. I don't see why they wouldn't go to a bowl. I mean, their first bowl, New Orleans would love to have them. Frisco would love to have them.
And they're too entertaining a team. They're not like some defensive slog team. They're a big offensive team.
Couple of things. One, there's not going to be enough bowl 6-win teams. I don't think there's even, some of the bowl projections I'm seeing even have Jacksonville State and JMU in there because they have to fill those extra slots. So I think that's going to be true. 2, you don't think Signetti, if he goes 12-0, is coach of the year?
No, I don't. All right.
I'm not
let me preface that.
Saying who will win.
I think it also depends on if he can play for the conference championship, and I mean that legitimately. That if he can truly show that he is the dominant coach with the dominant team in the league, legitimately.
Well, they won at Troy already.
Yeah. But I think that is still the caveat.
You know what, Tibbs, you are providing right now? Just another chip for Signetti to put on his shoulder and use as a weapon for next year.
I don't think I got a Signetti story that's interesting. Not personal interaction, but just observation. When I was when I was covering Alabama, he was wide receivers coach. He was Saban's first wide receivers coach. Ooh. And they go way back because Signetti's dad was head coach at West Virginia when Saban was growing up and all that kind of stuff. But everybody talks about the really bad butt chewing that Lane Kiffin got from Saban. I saw Signetti get one worse one time. And I'm trying to remember who they were playing. And it would be a great thing to, if you could ever get him off to the side and ask him about it. Anyway, he was back in those days, the offensive coordinator was in the booth, which I guess was McElwain at that time. And then he would relay the play down and Signetti would signal it in because he was standing right behind Saban. Something went haywire and Saban just unloaded on him for about 30 seconds. It was on TV. I'm trying to, it was as bad as as a coach chewing out another coach that I've ever seen.
I can't imagine what it would take, what sort of spiritual fortitude it would take to chew out Curt Signetti.
Well, he moved. I mean, he was like the George Washington on Mount Rushmore. He just kind of stood there, but which shouldn't surprise you. Based on our interactions with him. But
I have a photograph of him that I took, and he has this big smile on his face, and it does not touch his eyes. His eyes are still furious coals of anger. I love this guy. He's Tibbs is intimidated by Sean Elliott. I'm intimidated by Signetti. Is there any coach that you're intimidated by?
Well, hold on. Elliott's a former offensive line coach, and he's got a crew cut, so that'll worry. Coaches that would intimidate me. That's a good question.
I think another reason is not only his intensity. I have flashbacks of being raised military, and just I feel like I should be saluting him and saying, "Sir, yes, sir." Yeah,
I can see it. Summerall has the ability to be intimidating, but he's just such a nice guy. I'll tell you a story. I went to obviously went to the Troy South Alabama game, and I went and caught the South Alabama press after the game. They were standing outside the locker room. So I grabbed that, and then I go back inside to get the Troy stuff, and they're just about done. And I walk down there in their team meeting room or whatever, and someone goes, "Hey, Craig, how's it going?" I was like, hey, sorry I'm late. He said, well, I got time for 2 more questions from you. So I sat right down front and I asked my 2 questions. He walked out. It was great. He's held the press conference. Just for me. He's a good dude.
Is there a coach around the conference, Craig, that you just really enjoy talking to?
I guess probably Summerall. Summerall and Womack, I have really good relationships with those guys. Those are the only ones I really deal with a lot. I have found that G.J. Kinney, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but you're not going to get anything from the guy.
Mm-mm.
I don't even bother asking questions that often. Bowden's good,
Yes, he's a fun talk.
Yeah, and he obviously has a million stories. But I don't find any of them difficult really so far. I'll tell you, Clay Helton. I enjoyed talking to him when I had a chance. He had some really good stories about the difference between Los Angeles and Statesboro. I think he said when he was at USC, he slept in the office 3 nights a week because the traffic was so bad that he could get like an hour and a half of sleep before he had to turn around and go back to the office. It's just unbelievable.
See, now he was probably saying, yeah, I slept at the office, and everybody's like, oh man, the coach is really working hard on that game plan. But no, he just didn't want.
And then he said now, it takes him like 6 minutes to get to the office or something like that. So I'm sure seems to be enjoying life, which is good.
Closing out the week, App State, they stayed relevant in the Sun Belt Conference East, getting the win over a beat-up Marshall team, 31-9. Cam Fancher, 137, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. Rashid Ali, 68 yards. This just isn't the same Marshall team that we expected coming in. It's not the same Marshall team we saw week 1, week 2. App State, this is definitely the team that we were expecting to see.
I thought they had a chance to win the East, and there were a lot of people talking about Charles Huff being on the fast track to get a big job and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't look like it's going to happen now. And they come in here to Mobile next week. I'm looking interested to see what they've got. But, they're one that I just like, when they had that 4-game losing streak, I just kind of wrote them off.
Yeah, they won 4 straight.
Yeah.
To start the season, they won 4 straight, and everybody's like, "Yeah, this is the Thundering Herds year. They should be in the top 25. They look like one of the better Marshall teams that they were in the past." I felt kind of bad because early in the season, I thought, I don't think Marshall's the team. They've lost 5 straight, and if Shane were here, he'd remind us that those guys are beat up from top to bottom. They're not the same team because they're all just looking, injured. Cam Fancher's not the same quarterback. He's got some kind of injury. Throws the 3 picks, Tibbs. I mean, if with Cam Fancher, you just had to absorb at least 1 pick a game. Now he's throwing 3 a game. Does Marshall win another game this year? I don't know. I mean, maybe they have a special game up.
They penciled in ULM.
Southern, South Alabama, Arkansas State. So
yeah. So that's tough.
There'll be
and that was the week.
Yeah, and it was great for some of us.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.
For some of us, it was a magic week.
Craig, did you try on the belt? That's what I want to know.
Oh, now maybe if South Alabama ever wins it again, I'll get a chance to get in there and see it. It's funny covering South Alabama for this is my 9th year, and they've won it twice. They won the first one.
Yeah.
They won it in 2017, which was an upset when it happened because that was the Troy team that had just beat LSU, and South Alabama went in there and beat them. And it was actually Joey Jones' first year. Yeah, Joey Jones, the only South Alabama coach to ever beat Troy.
Wow, Joey
and that's why they put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the 7-7 Joey Jones. I love that guy.
So, Craig, we close out the show every time. Plug promo, parting shot.
Yeah.
Plug what you're doing. Plug whatever you want to. A parting shot of anything you've seen, observed, maybe even a horrible podcast you listen to every now and again.
Yeah. AL.com/USA or AL.com/Troy. You can find what I'm writing about those 2 teams. I'm on Twitter X at Creg Stephenson, CregStephenson. Not doing radio anymore. I did radio here in Mobile.
Yeah.
I quit doing that this year. So,
Oh man.
Yeah, well, I just my wife got a big promotion, so we didn't need the money anymore. So that was good. So beyond that, I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a parting shot other than I think that Troy's really good. Sorry.
That's a great parting shot. Troy's good.
Yeah.
How do you top that, Jeremy?
I can't. I will say this. I've been thinking about what's going on the Twitter sphere. I'm not going to call it the X sphere. About JMU. I believe the Sun Belt is going to the bat for them right now, right? Saying, hey, with the NCAA trying to make something work out. And there seems to be two camps, guys. There's the camp that says, hey, listen, you knew the rules coming in. The other guys in the conference had to deal with the same bullshit. It's stupid, but you've got to follow the rules. And then at the same time, this is a very unique situation. This is a situation where the Sun Belt could the NY6 Bowl could be represented for the first time by a Sun Belt program. So what is more important to the conference? That we maintain these rules, which I understand if somebody said, yeah, or that we get this type of representation that really puts a spotlight on the conference. I am torn, guys. I don't know what the correct answer is. I feel like the smart answer is let them in.
It really ramped up when Air Force lost. I think if Air Force lost, people would not care as much because they probably would have gone undefeated. But yeah, it's I don't know. Like you said, Georgia Southern, App State, all those guys had to deal with this. So I'm kind of the mind they probably just need to. It's unfortunate, but those are the rules, I guess. That's kind of where I'm at.
Tibbs, break it apart. You be the tiebreaker here. Oh my God, Shane, it's all up to you. You are the deciding voice. You are the judge.
Look, I would love nothing more than to have a Sun Belt team in the New Year's Six.
Mm-hmm.
But you knew what you signed up for
when
you decided to make the jump.
Yeah.
In addition to that, they've already bent the rules and said that you can be the first quote unquote 5-7 team if there's not enough bowl teams. So we'll get you in a bowl. Already breaking the rules. Now, maybe they go a little bit further and just say, sure, why not? You can play in the Sun Belt Championship. You can be a New Year's Six. But at the same time, the pressure is really on James Madison. If everybody's going to bend and break the rules for you, you better make damn sure that you're winning these last few games that you have, so that it's not egg on the face that you're sitting there at 11-1.
What they could have done too is they could have done what Jacksonville State did and start their transition in their last year of FCS. Because Jacksonville State did that. They moved up to, I think, from 63 to 75 scholarships in last season. So that made them disqualified them from the FCS playoffs. And now they're disqualified from the Conference USA championship and the, whatever bowl system. But next year they'll be eligible. So it's really, they were ineligible as an FBS team only 1 year instead of 2. Maybe JMU should have done that looking back on it.
But the other difference is that James Madison was damn near a shoe-in to at least be in the semifinals for FCS,
right.
whereas Jacksonville State was going to have to fight their way in.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I can understand why they didn't do it, but they would have had, they'd be eligible now if they had. So,
my parting shot. There's the great Dr. Pepper commercial with Fanville where they're like, it's a turnover. And the guy's like, our season's over. It's ruined. Right. And he's outside setting everything on fire.
Yes, just
I caught myself doing that last night. And then I realized that ULM was playing the number 7 team in the nation. And to add the expletive tag to our podcast, Houston's fucking good. They're a great defensive team. They push you out the perimeter. They're lean. They're tall. I mean, hell, their walk-on guy at the end of the bench had 6 points against ULM to close out the game for a new career high. There wasn't a whole lot that you could really do when the guy at the other end of the bench is still smoking threes late in the game.
Yeah.
So,
well, you guys are
only
talking about
burn the
basketball,
shirts.
so I'm out of my depth here.
Only burn the shirts and the gear if they're mediums. If they're still double X and they fit, hold on to them for another year.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we received a few DMs from Tibbs last night as he was moaning and groaning as it was Dunk City on ULM in Houston. But yeah, we saw the moaning and groaning from Craig while Mobile was having their inexplicable way with the Jaguars. And of course, my Arkansas State, a team that I'm finding very promising, did not look very promising against a very tough Wisconsin team. And you're right, it's the first game of the season. It's not time to burn jerseys, Tibbs. It's time to get behind the team.
Jeremy, just take your ball and go home.